I am building the Vermont Farmhouse Junior Dollhouse from start to finish, and today I'm going to show you how to paint folk art on your dollhouse trim. And don't worry, it's so much easier than you think, and you already have the tools right in your sewing box. Hello, my crafty dolls, and welcome to my craft room. I am Grandma Katie, and I am so glad you're here. This is episode 11 of my Vermont Farmhouse Junior Dollhouse build from start to finish, and we are now working on finishing up those tiny details on the dollhouse, and we are almost ready to start decorating and playing. Then that is the best part. Now, last episode, I showed you how to assemble the roof and stain and put on all those shingles, and I broke down all the steps and gave you helpful tips. So if you missed it, go back and watch that episode. Now, if you want to follow along with me through the entire dollhouse building series, I have a playlist set up right on my YouTube page, and all you do is go to that playlist. You can watch the episodes from number 1, and then it's so easy to go back and find episodes if you need to rewatch. And I'm also building this house in real time, so it takes me about 2 weeks for my videos to come out. I have to build, I have to edit, and then I have to upload my video, and it really does take me a long time. So make sure you are subscribed, because next episode you don't want to miss. I am going to be finishing the windows, the doors, and then putting in all the trim and molding on the inside. So of course, I'm going to give you some of the best tips on how to make that step a lot easier for you. But today I am going to show you how to hand paint folk art on the gingerbread trim. We're going to do the same thing to the shutters and the flower boxes, and then we're going to match it all to our front door. And we are going to go all out cutesy and whimsical with the dollhouse, because honestly, we really can't do that with our own homes unless, we have a Queen Anne or a Victorian house, which I do not have. So we are going to go to the land of make-believe with tiny little painted flowers. Now, specifically, I am going to be doing Scandinavian folk art, and all it is rustic stylized nature-inspired painting. And what the people of Norway, Sweden, and Denmark would do is paint flowers and leaves on their tables, their chairs, their dressers, their front doors, their walls, even on the outside of their house. And they would use really bright colors. And I would imagine all this painting would really get them through the long, dark, cold winters. It would really just put them in a really happy and good mood. Now, this is a picture of my inspiration, and it has little hearts and daisies and leaves. Now, my crafty dolls, you might be scared and think there is no way I can paint that. I am definitely going to need a stencil, but I really simplify this painting into a very easy pattern that anyone can paint. And the biggest secret are my tools. And all I'm going to be using is a wall nail, a sewing pin, and then a 1/2-inch button. And then I have just 2 very, very small brushes. And if you don't have these, you can always go to your craft store and you can just buy one brush. You don't have to buy a whole set. And the exact size will be in my description box below. Now, once I show you the basics, you can go off and expand and create your own pattern. You can go to Pinterest and search Scandinavian folk art, and you are going to see endless patterns and even tutorials. Or you can just copy my easy pattern. Now, as far as paint, we're just going to use your basic acrylic craft paint in what I like to call elementary school colors. We have your basic red, blue, yellow, green, and then black and white. And then I'm going to be bringing back my pink paint that I used for the outside of the house. Now, I know what you're thinking. You might think, no, these colors aren't going to work. It's going to look like a first grade art project, but trust me, it's going to look great. Now, as far as glue, you can use tacky glue or the Beacon 3-in-1 for all of the trim. It doesn't really matter. But since I am going to be putting together the shutters, these little pieces here are very, very thin and they might curl. So just to be on the safe side, I'm going to be using the Beacon 3-in-1 for all of my trim, and mostly because I bought way too much of this. I overbought. So let's get started on the folk art painting. I really, really hope you try. It's so much fun, and let's get started. I have so much to show you. All right, my crafty dolls, this is our chance to take this plain dollhouse and give it a cutesy makeover. Because like I said before, we can do things to our dollhouse that we just could never do to our own homes. And yes, this trim looks really cute just painted, but we can do a lot better. Now, this is what I'm talking about. Over the top whimsical. There is nothing more cute than a hand painted heart or daisy. And I guarantee everyone will envy your cute folk art painting and they'll wonder, how in the world did you do it? And they will never know just how easy it is. Now, the secret to this fancy painting are the tools, and I'm going to grab my box of nails and pick out a small nail for like hanging pictures. And I'm going to use the head of this nail to make my hearts and daisies, and I'm also going to use the tip of the nail for my small dots. Then I'm going to grab my sewing pins, and I'm using the head of the pin to make my petals of the daisy. And then I'm going to use a 1/2-inch button to make some vines. And finally, a very small brush to make leaves. And if you want, you can get an even smaller brush to do highlights, but you really can just get away with just one brush. Now for the paint, I am just going to use my basic acrylic craft paint in lipstick red, yellow light, cobalt blue, bright green, winter white. And I was going to use black, but I decided no black. So I'm going to put that aside. And then I'm going to use my leftover pink paint from my dollhouse. Now you can always use any color you want, but I'm going to go very traditionally and I'm going to stick to the vibrant, bright colors. And now we have to design our folk art pattern. And to really help us out, we need to make a bunch of copies of the gingerbread trim on page 20 of the instructions. And it's so nice because it is actual size. Now, if you can't make copies, you can simply trace the trim on some paper. Now I'm going to color in my template the same color as my trim. And then I am going to use the templates to design my pattern. And here is my inspiration. And I'm going to take out elements of that design, like the hearts, daisies, and green leaves, and really simplify it. And not only am I using the paper templates to make a pattern, it is great for practice. So before you even start painting the real trim, you want to get a sense of how the paint behaves and what to paint first. And it's always a great idea before you begin is to warm up first on the paper before you start on the wood. Even if you take a break, go back to the paper, warm up, and then you can go to the wood. You can cut out your paper trim and do some experimenting. Go ahead and tape it to the dollhouse and see how it's all going to look. Now you can see I did a lot of pattern planning and practicing my brush strokes. I edited and fine-tuned my design and it's perfect. It looks just like my inspiration, and best of all, it is really easy. Okay, let's paint. Now I am going to start with the gable trim first, and then I'm going to show you how to paint each part of the pattern. And then once you learn the basics, it's all about repeating that same brush stroke for all the other trim, doors, and the shutters. Now I just want to point out that when the two pieces are joined together at the top, I have a heart and then there's two daisies. Now I'm going to leave those for later after it is glued onto the house. That way everything will line up perfectly. Okay, so now let's break down this pattern. Now I am going to start with the hearts first. Now you can measure if you want and make little marks. I'm actually just going to eyeball this part. Take the nail and dip the head right into the red paint, and you can dip it right into the bottle, nothing fancy. And then you want to make two stamps right next to each other in the center of that teardrop. Then you want to dip your nail again for the next heart. Now that made the two top bumps of the heart. Now just take a small brush and dab a tiny dot centered just below the two stamps, and just make a small line up from that dot on each side and fill in your heart. And I don't know about you, but I like a short little chubby heart. It is the cutest. And next I'm going to make the yellow centers of the daisies. And then there is a tiny yellow dot right under each heart. First, dip the head of the nail in the yellow paint and stamp in between the hearts, and then just one on the end. Now for the yellow dots under the hearts, dip the head of a sewing pin in the paint and just make a small dot just under the tip of the heart. Now next to the heart, there are two blue dots. So dip your sewing pin into the blue paint and stamp two dots next to each heart. Now right above the blue dots, there is a smaller blue dot, and I am going to use the tip of the nail to make these tiny dots. You just dip the pointed edge of your nail into the blue paint to make your dots. And right next to the teardrops are three pink dots, and you use your sewing pin to make your dots. And it's really nice that the dots are tucked right into that V-shaped curve of the trim. And now I'm going to work on the bottom green leaves. Using my brush, I'm going to make one long brush stroke from the yellow dot to the blue on the outside of the teardrop. And then I'm going to make a smaller brush stroke towards the inside. This does take a bit of practice, so make sure you use your paper templates to master the leaf stroke. Now, because I'm right-handed, I'm going to flip my trim upside down so I can recreate that mirror image of the leaves. I just have to stroke the brush down instead of up. There are tiny little green leaves next to the three pink dots. Just make two tiny V's with your brush to the outside of those pink dots. They kind of look like little baby rosebuds. Okay, moving on, I'm going to use the white paint to make the daisy petals. Now we just want to make sure that the yellow paint is fully dry so your paint doesn't bleed together. Now you just dip the sewing pin into the white paint and then dab two dots on the top and then on the bottom of the yellow dot. Dip your pin again and make two dots on the one side in between the top and the bottom, and then you do the same for the left side. And then once you get the hang of this, it is so easy. And my crafty dolls, who knew that little tiny dots can make such cute little flowers? And now in between the daisies and centered above the heart is one simple white dot. And I just made that with my sewing pin. And now all that is left is to do a little bit of highlights. And this is really going to make our pattern pop. And I'm going to use the tip of my nail and I'm going to add a tiny white dot on top of my blue dots. And I'm still going to use the tip of my nail again, and I am going to put tiny red dots in the middle of my pink dot clusters that I made, my little rosebuds. And finally, I am going to add the white highlights to the heart. And again, make sure the red paint is completely dry before this step. I'm going to use a small brush, or you can use an even smaller brush. Just practice and see what works for you. Now just put a small amount of white paint on your brush and starting on the upper left-hand side of your heart, make a tiny C shape, then make a tiny line from the bottom tip of your heart up to the right. And now just add 2 to 3 tiny dots to the upper right-hand side of your heart and you're done. And this little bit of white highlight really makes the heart pop. And it really looks like you know how to paint, even if you've never tried it before. So when this pattern is really broken down, it really is very easy. And it's going to add so much character to your dollhouse. I really hope you try it. And remember, I am going to finish painting the top of my trim after it is glued on the house. I cannot have a broken heart on my dollhouse. That has to be some bad luck. The next piece of trim goes on the front of the porch, and this is super easy because it is the exact same pattern as the gable window. And aw, look, they match. So sweet. When it comes to the pieces on the sides of the porch, we need to make sure we paint the correct side. And since the pieces are not symmetrical, we need a left and a right side. So make sure the pieces are mirrored before you paint. You do not want to find out the hard way. And of course, I am just going to repeat the same pattern as the trim from the front of the porch. And of course, my pattern doesn't quite work out with the side pieces. The edge of the trim is cut right in half where my heart is supposed to be. And again, it is bad luck to have a broken heart on your dollhouse. So I'm just going to paint 3 small dots, and that will solve the problem. And now I'm going to be moving on to the side gable roof trim. And the trim is much bigger than what we have been working on so far, but the pattern is the same. But there is a little difference. I did bring those 3 little rosebuds down next to the heart. And just like the gable window trim, I am going to finish painting the top after it is glued on the house. And just remember, you want a hand painted look. Don't worry about your paint strokes being exactly the same. If you make a little mistake, just leave it. It's really refreshing to see things handmade in an age of computers and AI. And Crafty Dolls, I'm from Generation X. I prefer things that are made from scratch. And next is the trim for the top of the house, which is the same size as the roof trim. So I'm going to use the exact same pattern. The only difference is the roof trim points down and the top of the trim faces up. So all I am going to do is flip the heart and the leaves right upside down. And my crafty dolls, if you ever wanted to keep busy and stay off your phone, building a dollhouse is just a great hobby. You can just put on some music and paint and just fade away and not feel guilty that you scrolled on your phone for over 2 hours. Instead, I feel much more accomplished because I painted both sides of this trim in 2 hours. Okay, so now let's tackle all those window shutters. Now, if you have been following me from the beginning of my series, you remember that I didn't glue or paint the shutters together. I have to glue these 2 decorative pieces onto the shutter, but before I do that, I am going to trace the shutters on some paper so I can plan and practice my pattern, because even though I am using the same elements of my design, I need to change the configuration a little bit to fit the square shape of the shutter. It's not going to match exactly to my trim, but it's all going to coordinate together very nicely. Now to glue the shutters together, I'm going to place the decorative pieces equal spacing from the top and the sides, and then do the same for the bottom piece, equal spacing. Now the instructions say to use very little glue because the pieces could curl if you use a water-based glue like tacky glue. So just to be on the safe side, I am going to use the Beacon 3-in-1 glue so I don't have to worry about my wood curling. Now just give your shutters 2 coats of paint, and now we are all ready for our hand painting. Now, I have been getting away with not measuring out my design, but I can't do that anymore. I need to find the center. So my hearts and daisies are going to line up with all of the shutters. Now, I just made a quick paper template of the decorative piece. I fold it in half and mark the center. And I do this on all the shutters, and the template really makes it fast and easy. Now the big difference on the new pattern is the white scalloped on the edge of the 2 decorative pieces on the shutter. And all you do is dip the head of the nail into the white paint and dab the edge with only half of the top of the head. So you get this cute half circle scalloped edge all the way around. Now just do the same for the second inner rectangle. And now we're going to make the yellow centers of the daisies on the center mark that we made. And then we're going to put one right in the middle of the gap. Now make the heart above and below your daisies, and the top heart should be right side up, and then the bottom heart should be upside down. And now we're going to add a little bit of green just between the heart and the daisy. I'm going to paint green lines vertically, and then I'm going to paint two little green lines horizontally coming out from that center daisy. And now I'm just going to add little green leaves to both sides of those green lines, and the leaves should be pointed away from the daisy. And then just do the same for the vertical green lines in the middle. Paint the leaves pointed away from the daisy. Some are going up and then the others are going down. And finally, add all the finishing touches so that everything matches. And when the shutters are next to each other, the hearts and the daisies line up perfectly. So my crafty dolls, I had it in my mind that I was going to paint all the trim in just one day, and it took me 4 days. I just never seemed to learn. So to make up for some time, I set up a little assembly line, and it is a lot of painting, I'm not gonna lie, but it is worth it. Just look at these cute shutters. Okay, so now we're going to move right along to doing the flower boxes. Now, I want to keep the flower boxes fairly simple because I'm going to have flowers in them and they're going to be right next to those really busy shutters. So a cute green scrolly vine and a heart in the middle is going to keep them right on theme without being too busy. Now, the first thing we need to do is measure and mark the center of the flower box. And then we're going to measure a 1/4 inch from the center to the right and then on the left. And now I'm going to use my very high-tech 1/2 inch button to make the scrolly vine. And to keep my button in place, I am going to use my trusty museum putty. I absolutely love this stuff. Put a little on the back of your button and you're going to line it up to that 1/4 inch mark, and then the bottom of the button should be flush with the bottom of the flower box. And now just trace the top of the button. And now all you have to do is do the same thing for the left side. And now place the button flush with the top of the box and next to your pencil line, and then go ahead and trace the bottom of your button. And now just keep repeating the whole process, moving the button from top to bottom, left to right, until you have the perfect scrolly vine. And my crafty dolls, that wasn't so hard, was it? Who needs a stencil? And now where the button lines connected, I am going to put little leaves, and it is just the perfect way to hide my little lines. But first, I am going to paint the same white scallop edge as the shutters all the way around the flower box. And now just above my center mark, I'm going to place my heart. Now I want the tip of my heart to hit that center mark. And now start with 2 little green leaves below the heart, and then go ahead and paint your green vine. Add a little bit of those green leaves along your vine, and just do the same for the left side. And just remember, my crafty dolls, it is supposed to look hand painted, so don't over fuss your brush strokes. The house trim is next on our list, and before we start painting, we have to measure and cut the pieces to fit the angle of the roof, and then we have to cut them to the right length. So let's cut all 4 of these trim pieces before we start painting. Now on page 20 of the instructions, there is a cutting template to cut the perfect angle for the roof. And now we really need to be smart here, not to make a really big mistake, because I pre-painted my pieces on one side. So I'm going to cut the angle with the painted side up, and then flip it over and then cut the angle on the painted side down. Now, if you haven't bought one of these miter cutters yet, you are really missing out on a real time saver. And now we have the perfect mirrored angles for the front and the back. And don't forget to cut the bottom off for the right length. And just a cool tip, to keep all of the 4 different pieces in order while we paint, label the backs so we don't mix them up. And now I've got a set of trim for one side of the house, and you can see that they are a different length. So I'm going to line up the bottoms so they match. And here is my pattern, and it is just copying the pattern from the shutter. All it is the hearts and daisies running up the length of the trim. And now I really want to keep my hearts and my daisies all lined up and perfectly spaced. So I'm going to mark from the bottom where my first daisy is going to be. And then from that mark, I'm going to measure and mark every 1 inch. And then just start by painting the scallop edge all around the trim. Alternate your daisies and hearts right on that 1 inch mark we made. I'm going to add some leaves to the very bottom and then add more branches between the heart and the daisies, and just make sure all the leaves are painted up. And I am just going to continue painting and painting and painting the branches and leaves all the way to the top. And that is the end of day 3 of endless painting. But look how cute everything turned out. So worth it. Okay, we are almost finished. I'm going to work on the front door, and this is going to be really easy because I'm just repeating the shutter pattern, and I'm just going to add more hearts and daisies to the door panels. Now, to ensure the pattern stays symmetrical and evenly spaced, just make sure you measure and mark where all of your hearts and daisies are going to be placed. Now at the bottom of my front door, I want to tie in the scrolly green vine that I painted on the window boxes. And I'm just going to use my button again to make the pencil line. And we are pros at this now. I'm just going to paint my little green vine. Now in the middle of my vine, I want a smaller little red heart. So I'm going to use my sewing pin to make my heart, and I'm going to add a small heart to the middle of the door and then on the top. Oh, and look how cute this is. There is no need for a welcome sign. I mean, who wouldn't want to walk right through this door? My crafty dolls, the last thing I have to do is just paint the back screen door. I don't have to do much because it is so intricate to begin with, but I have to do a little something to tie it in to the rest of the house. And to make a long story short, I just added daisy hearts and leaves to the middle of the door, and it's just a little touch of that folk art painting. All right, my crafty dolls, let's get to the fun part. Let's put everything on the dollhouse. And I'm going to start with the gable window trim, and I am just going to use my Beacon 3-in-1 glue, and it's great because it dries really fast. So you really don't need to worry about your trim slipping and sliding on you. And just make sure the ends line up with the bottom of the roof, and the very top should connect evenly with the roof. And now once all the glue is fully dry, I'm going to go back and finish painting the top peak of my trim. I'm going to put in my heart and my 2 daisies. And now I have a perfectly shaped heart at the very top of my roof. It is so cute. And next I am going to add the side house trim, and I'm just going to add some tape to the trim so I can help hold it into place. Give the back of the trim some glue and just make sure everything is flush with the house. And I am really wishing that I could add little hearts and daisies to my own house. And now I'm going to glue the side gable roof trim on, and always make sure the top of the trim lines up perfectly. And just like the front gable, I have to finish painting my top heart so it is shaped perfectly. All right, my crafty dolls, what do you think so far? I think it is the cutest house on the block. All right, let's just keep it moving and let's work on the front porch. And I am going to glue the 2 side pieces on first. Now just dab a little glue onto the end towards the house and then on the side of the post. And now you just want to make sure you glue the piece under the porch roof and not directly onto the side. And now just do the same thing for the left side. And now the front piece is going to go right over those side pieces and cover up that little edge. You just need a little bit of glue on the very top of the trim and place it right underneath the porch roof. And my crafty dolls, it looks so cute. And now for the front door. Now I am not going to glue it on right now because I have to stain the inside of the door. I'm going to do that next episode, but I have to see how it looks. And I have to wait until next episode to finish my windows. So the shutters are going to have to go up with just a little bit of that museum putty just so I can see how everything comes together. And when it comes to the window boxes, I am never going to glue them on to the house. Instead, I am going to use museum putty. Now, in my next episode, I am going to show you a really cool trick on how to have interchangeable flowers in your boxes. So nothing is permanent. You can change the flowers out if they get dusty, or you can change them for the seasons. I just didn't have enough time to show you today. So hit the bell so you don't miss my next episode. All right, my crafty dolls, this is the last piece and it is truly the crowning moment of the day. And all you do is add glue to the groove on the top of the house. And what's really nice is that the glue dries fairly quickly. So I just have to hold it for a little bit until it sets into place. And here is my fancy folk art painting from the back of the dollhouse and then from the front. All right, you have to let me know what you think in the comments down below. Are you going to try this folk art painting on your dollhouse? Do you like my pattern or are you going to design your own? I really hope I inspired you to do something different with your dollhouse. All right, my crafty dolls, what do you think? Do you love it? Is it too much? I personally think it's absolutely adorable. I mean, where else can you get away with that cutesy painting than on your dollhouse? And the best part is that it is so easy once you know the basics. You can really go off and create your own pattern. You can try it on your miniature furniture as well. And I really love the monochromatic look. You can do all white or maybe all red would look really, really sharp. Now, next week, I'm going to be finishing the windows and putting those in, and then we're going to work on the interior doors, and then I'm going to be showing you how to install all of the trim and molding. And then on a later episode, I am going to show you how to make a turntable so we can flip our house all the way around so we can play with it on all sides. So make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss my next episodes. And they're about 2 weeks apart now. So again, it takes me a very, very long time to do these videos. Now, my whole plan when the house is done is to show you how I decorate each room. So I have an antique store, I have a sewing room, a laundry room, and then I'm going to be making a backyard with a garden. So I am working on new miniatures to complement my new rooms. And if you do not know, I have an Etsy shop and I design and create digital miniatures for your dollhouse. I have so many unique items to choose from. You download your file and then you print it at home and then you put it together, and they are so much fun to put together. And if you favor my Etsy shop, you will be alerted to all my new listings that are coming soon. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.